Hey guys, so just a quick Saturday video here for you. We've got a busy day and I'm gonna go take care of the last of the Christmas shopping. We've got to go pay Santa for the gifts he's gonna bring the kids, and a lot of stuff to get done. Hopefully wrap everything up today, but I wanted to just stop for a second and talk a little bit about a Twitter message that I saw I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, and it was a post by Thomas Heaton, who is, if you don't know by now, you're living under a rock if you're watching these. He's a phenomenal photographer and vlogger on YouTube that takes you behind the scenes as he's out shooting and behind his process, and he's just fantastic. But he posted something about a recent picture he took when he was traveling in Zion National Park, and made a comment about how, even 3 months ago, 6 months ago, something like that, that he wouldn't have even given that corner that he took the photo in a second look. And how over, especially the last 3 months for him, he's noticed that there's been a lot of change and growth in his photography. And it kind of got me thinking a little bit about the idea of growth and change, and how we change as photographers as time goes on. And I realized, like, it's kind of tough. It's a tough one to tackle, because for me, I know that I can definitely point to areas and see where things have changed in my photography, where I've definitely grown, I've gotten better, whatever better means. Technically my skills have gotten sharper, and it's just the act of getting out and creating something every day, I think, that helps, fine tune and hone those skills. But when I think of growth as a photographer, I don't think of it in terms of, the skills or the technical side of it. I think the growth happens more on the creative side. And it's something we've talked about quite a bit here on and off over the time I've been doing these videos, is the idea of inspiration and creativity and all of that. And I think one thing that we haven't really mentioned too much is the idea of growth and how we change. And I don't know if growth is even the right word, because that kind of implies that, if you're going to grow, it means that you're always getting better, you're moving to a better place, which typically can be the case, but it's not always. I mean, there's times when you kind of get in these photographic ruts, and you feel comfortable with what you're doing, and you get better and better at that one thing. Is that really growth, or is that just learning that particular skill a little better? Now, for me, I kind of picture growth as a photographer as being able to look at it and, try and see where, on the creative side, am I making images that are, I don't want to say telling a story more, but are they capturing an emotion? Are they getting some sort of emotional response, versus just, hey, that's a pretty scene, and let me just share that up. And that's perfectly fine as well. And that kind of gets into a whole bigger discussion as far as, a single image that's going to portray this whole story, or is it better to have a small series of images that kind of tie together? That's a topic for another time. But in terms of growth, I'm really curious to see what you guys think on, what do you consider growth as a photographer? Do you feel that you grow as a photographer as time goes on? And what are the factors that go into that for you that help you kind of realize that, yeah, I've accomplished something? And for me, a lot of people will look at it and say, well, let's look at what we can measure. Let's look at your Facebook page or your Instagram or things like that, and see, are you gaining followers? Are you gaining an audience? Are you getting more people engaged? And yeah, that could be seen as a form of growth if that's what your goal is, but as a photographer, I don't really see how that's making you, any more successful, or I shouldn't say successful, because I mean, that's the side of it where you get into the, what's professional versus what's amateur, versus, does it really mean anything to have likes and shares and all that stuff, versus anything more than just an ego boost. But what I'm talking about is, can you see some progression in your photo work that's going to allow you to really, notice that you're better at not just the technical aspect, but you're seeing things better. You're being able to pull out just those key elements in a scene to make that image really sing. And maybe it only is singing for you. That's the thing to keep in mind too, that when we measure growth as a photographer, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's got to be judged by other people. It's more about how you feel about your own work, and if you've noticed some changes, and if you feel they're changes for the better or for the worse. It very likely could be that you've grown into some bad habits as a photographer, or you've grown into some, kind of photographic ruts where you tend to photograph the same picture over and over. And those are areas where, yes, we grow into those modes, and then it's an opportunity, once you realize that, to move on and to, take things in another direction, or do things a little differently, just to, push your work to a place where you're happy with it. So kind of just, a little bit rambly, but a little bit of a thought process today about, have I grown as a photographer? If I look back on some of my past work, do I feel that I've grown and moved forward in my photography? And B is just kind of the idea of, what does that mean really for you as an individual, as a photographer? What does it mean if you are going to look and see if you've shown growth as a photographer? How can you measure that, and what are the things that you can look at and point to that are kind of tangible, that are something you can put into words and explain and quantify in a sense, that are going to show that growth, quote unquote. And so, I definitely think it's a very interesting topic, and it's also something that I think for most of us, whether you're a photographer, musician, artist, any creative pursuit that we're doing, I think that process of growth, should really never stop happening. We should always continue to grow and expand, our creative horizons, so to speak, not to sound cliche, but it's something that I think we want to work at, always moving our work forward, always making it, something that we're more and more proud of, something that, in some ways we want to be able to look back at photos we've taken, say 5 years ago, 8 years ago, stuff like that, and say, wow, at the time that was my absolute best work. I was so proud of that image. And now when I look at it, it's kind of cringeworthy. We see maybe we were in one of those really heavy-handed, post-processing phases where we were doing some real funky stuff, or maybe it's just, the way we compose a scene has changed, or we're, getting better at, really minimalizing what's there for maximum impact. So, a lot of factors go into it, but what does it mean to really grow as a photographer? So I'm going to leave you guys with that thought. I'd love to hear what you think, and I've got to get going because we've got to go take care of a real busy day here today. We do have some sun, which is killing me that I can't be out all day taking pictures, but real life comes first. The photography is something I do on the side, and so we'll have a camera with me just in case, but most of the day is going to be spent, in places where I'm not going to be taking advantage of the beautiful sunlight we have, even though it's really cold out this morning. So you guys take care, have a great Saturday, and I will talk to you tomorrow.